The galaxy's soldiers knew no fear. Then a human sniper stepped onto the field. The Corvallian battlefront stretched across the crimson plains of Xerion Prime, like a wound that refused to heal. For 3 standard cycles, the galaxy's most elite military forces had been locked in brutal combat with the insectoid Hive Collective. The air reeked of plasma discharge and burnt chitin, while the constant thunder of artillery created a symphony of destruction that never ceased. Commander Zexhai of the Turian Shock Corps crouched behind a twisted metal barrier, his 4 arms checking his weapon systems with practiced efficiency. Around him, soldiers from a dozen different species maintained their positions in the trenches that scarred the landscape, the Corvallians with their crystalline armor that could deflect most energy weapons. The Vorthak, whose natural exoskeletons made them living tanks, the telepathic ethereals, whose mental abilities could coordinate attacks across vast distances without communication equipment. These were the galaxy's finest warriors, beings who had conquered fear through centuries of genetic engineering, mental conditioning, and technological enhancement. Each species had evolved or modified themselves to become perfect instruments of war. The Corvallians felt no pain. The Vorthak knew no retreat. The ethereals possessed minds that could process battlefield information faster than any computer. Yet despite their combined might, the Hive continued to push forward. "Another wave incoming from Sector 7, announced Lieutenant Yartok, his mandibles clicking nervously as he monitored the tactical display. The insectoid creatures of the Hive moved like a living tide of death, their numbers seemingly endless. Each individual drone was expendable, connected to a collective consciousness that felt no individual fear because there were no individuals to feel it. Zexhai studied the battlefield through his enhanced optical sensors. The latest Hive assault had broken through the eastern flank, forcing the ethereal mind guard to retreat. Even their legendary mental fortitude couldn't stand against the pure, emotionless hunger of the collective. The creatures simply kept coming, wave after wave, until even the most disciplined minds cracked under the pressure. "Sir, we have a problem," called Sergeant Veltar from the communications array. "The Nexus Council is sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive for another 2 cycles. Command wants us to hold position until then." The commander's secondary arms tightened involuntarily. 2 more cycles. They had been fighting at maximum intensity for weeks already, and even their enhanced metabolisms were beginning to fail. The Corvallians' energy reserves were depleting faster than their suits could recharge. The Vorthak were showing stress fractures in their natural armor. The ethereals reported increasing psychic interference from the Hive's collective consciousness. "What about those new recruits from the Outer Rim?" Zexhai asked, grasping at any possibility for fresh reinforcements. "The humans?" Veltar's voice carried a note of skepticism. "Command assigned one to our sector, but the personnel files are unusual. They're not enhanced like us. No genetic modifications, no mental conditioning, no technological augmentation beyond basic equipment. Honestly, sir, I'm not sure what they expect a primitive species to contribute here." Zexhai had heard rumors about the humans, a young species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel and petitioned to join the Galactic Defense Force. Their homeworld was apparently a death trap of natural disasters, predatory wildlife, and climatic extremes that would kill most civilized species within hours. Yet somehow, they had not only survived, but thrived in such conditions. The galaxy's military leadership had accepted their application more out of curiosity than any real expectation of combat effectiveness. How could an unmodified primitive species possibly contribute alongside the galaxy's evolved warriors? A new sound cut through the battlefield noise. Not the high-pitched whine of energy weapons or the thunderous explosions of artillery, but something sharper, more precise. A crack like breaking crystal, followed immediately by the wet sound of a Hive drone's carapace shattering. Then another crack, and another. "What is that?" Yartok demanded, his optical stalks swiveling to track the sound. Through his enhanced vision, Zexhai spotted movement on a rocky outcropping nearly 2 kilometers away. A single figure lay prone against the stone, barely visible even with military-grade sensors. The figure moved with fluid precision, adjusting position between shots with an economy of motion that spoke of absolute confidence. Another crack echoed across the battlefield, and one of the massive hive warriors commanding the assault suddenly jerked backward. Green ichor spraying from where its primary optical cluster had been. The creature toppled, and for a moment the advancing swarm seemed to hesitate as their coordination faltered. "Impossible," breathed Yartok. "That target was over 2 kilometers away. No handheld weapon has that kind of effective range." Zexhai activated his long-range scanners and focused on the distant figure. The readings made no sense. The shooter was using what appeared to be a primitive projectile weapon, firing solid metal rounds instead of energy beams. The technology was so outdated that most species had abandoned it millennia ago in favor of more efficient plasma and particle weapons. Yet the results spoke for themselves. Every shot found its mark with impossible precision. Hive commanders dropped one after another, their deaths sending ripples of confusion through the collective consciousness. Drones began milling about without proper coordination, their advance slowing as the invisible sniper continued to eliminate their leadership. "Who is that shooter?" Zexhai demanded, switching to the command frequency. "Corporal Sarah Chen, Terran Defense Force," came the crisp reply from Tactical Command. "She volunteered to take an advanced position and provide overwatch for your sector." The name meant nothing to any of them, but the effect of her presence was undeniable. The hive assault that had seemed unstoppable just minutes ago was now fragmenting into isolated groups. Without their commanders to coordinate their movements, the drones became predictable, vulnerable to the concentrated fire from the galaxy's conventional forces. Zexhai watched in fascination as the human sniper continued her methodical elimination of targets. There was something almost artistic about her technique. Each shot was carefully considered, perfectly timed, and devastatingly effective. She wasn't just killing enemies, she was systematically dismantling their command structure with surgical precision. "How is she making those shots?" Veltar asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. "Our ballistics experts said projectile weapons were useless at extreme range due to environmental factors, trajectory calculations, and target movement." "Perhaps," Zexhai mused. "We've been thinking about this all wrong." The Corvalians had eliminated fear through genetic modification. The Vorthak had conquered it through natural evolution. The Ethereals had transcended it through mental discipline. Each species had found their own way to become fearless warriors, but in doing so, they had also lost something essentially vital. They had lost the ability to feel the primal instinctive responses that came with genuine stakes. When you couldn't feel fear, you also couldn't feel the razor-sharp focus that came from knowing that every decision mattered, every shot counted, every mistake could be your last. But this human, this primitive creature from a death world, still possessed that ancient fire. She felt fear, acknowledged it, and used it as a tool to sharpen her already impressive skills to a perfect edge. Every shot she fired came with the weight of consequences, the knowledge that failure meant not just personal death, but the deaths of everyone counting on her. Another crack split the air, and a hive artillery creature collapsed as its targeting organ exploded in a shower of acidic fluid. The alien artillery that had been raining death on the defensive positions fell silent as its operators died one by one. "Remarkable," whispered Yartok. "She's single-handedly neutralizing their fire support." The tide of battle was turning. What had been an organized assault was becoming a chaotic rout as the hive forces found themselves leaderless and blind. The galaxy's forces, inspired by this unexpected development, began to advance from their defensive positions for the first time in days. HFY found himself studying the distant human with new respect. The galaxy's military doctrine had always focused on eliminating weaknesses, on creating perfect soldiers through enhancement and modification. But perhaps true strength came not from the absence of fear, but from the mastery of it. The human sniper continued her deadly work, each shot a testament to skills honed by necessity rather than enhancement, sharpened by genuine stakes rather than artificial conditioning. For the first time since the battle began, HFY felt something he hadn't experienced in cycles: hope. The galaxy's soldiers had known no fear, and in their fearlessness, they had found themselves unable to defeat an enemy that felt nothing at all. But now, a single human who understood fear intimately was showing them what true fearlessness looked like. The galaxy's soldiers knew no fear. Then a human sniper stepped onto the field. The communications array crackled with urgent transmissions as news of the Sector 7 breakthrough spread across the battlefield command network. Every military leader in the galactic force wanted to understand how a single primitive warrior had accomplished what their most advanced units had failed to achieve in weeks of bitter fighting. Commander HFY monitored the tactical displays with growing amazement. The human sniper had been active for less than an hour, yet the entire dynamics of the conflict had shifted. Hive formations that had moved with machine-like precision now wandered aimlessly across the battlefield. Their coordination network, built on the assumption that their commanders were untouchable at extreme range, had collapsed under the methodical elimination of key targets. "Sir, we're receiving direct orders from High Command," reported Sergeant Veltar, his voice carrying an unusual note of excitement. "They want us to advance and capitalize on the enemy confusion. The human has created a tactical window, and we need to exploit it before the Hive adapts." The advance began slowly, centuries of military doctrine warring against the evidence of their sensors. The galaxy's finest soldiers had been conditioned to fight from prepared positions, using their technological advantages to maintain safe distances from enemy forces. Close combat was considered inefficient, unnecessarily risky when superior firepower could achieve the same objectives. But as they moved forward, something unexpected happened. The Corvalians, whose genetic modifications had eliminated their capacity for fear, began to experience something they had never felt before: exhilaration. Watching the human sniper work had awakened something primal in their enhanced psyches, a recognition that combat could be more than just efficient elimination of targets. Lieutenant Yartok led his squad across the scarred terrain, his four arms moving in perfect coordination as he engaged scattered Hive drones. "This is incredible," he called over the comm system. "For the first time in my military career, I understand why our ancestors called it the thrill of battle." The Vorthak, whose natural armor had always made them living tanks, discovered that mobility could be just as effective as raw protection. Inspired by the humans' fluid positioning and constant movement, they began using hit-and-run tactics instead of their traditional static defensive strategies. Their exoskeletons, designed for absorbing punishment, proved remarkably effective for rapid repositioning under fire. Even the ethereals found their mental capabilities enhanced by the changing battlefield conditions. Without the constant pressure of coordinated Hive assaults, their telepathic networks could focus on precision coordination rather than defensive mental barriers. They began sharing tactical insights at speeds that transformed their allied units into a seamlessly coordinated fighting force. But it was more than just tactical innovation. The human sniper's presence had introduced something to the battlefield that none of the galaxy's enhanced species possessed: unpredictability, born of organic creativity rather than programmed responses. From her position on the rocky outcropping, Corporal Sarah Chen continued her deadly work. Her primitive weapon, a chemically propelled projectile rifle that most galactic citizens would consider a museum piece, spoke with devastating authority across impossible distances. Each shot required calculations that would challenge military computers, yet she performed them instinctively, reading wind patterns, atmospheric density, and target movement with skills developed through years of hunting on humanity's dangerous homeworld. The Hive Collective had built its entire strategy around predictable enemy behavior. Enhanced species fought in patterns determined by their modifications and conditioning. Artificial intelligences followed logical decision trees. Even highly trained conventional forces operated within established tactical doctrines. But humans were different. They had evolved on a world where survival required constant adaptation, where the ability to think outside established patterns meant the difference between life and death. Their unenhanced minds possessed a chaotic creativity that no amount of genetic modification or technological augmentation could replicate. Chen's target selection exemplified this difference. While any competent military analysis would prioritize command creatures and heavy weapons, she chose targets based on a complex understanding of battlefield psychology that the galaxy's enhanced species couldn't comprehend. She eliminated not just leaders, but specific individuals whose deaths would create maximum psychological impact on the collective consciousness. A particularly massive Hive warrior, one whose presence seemed to bolster nearby drone morale, became her next target. The creature stood nearly 4 meters tall, its chitinous armor scarred from countless battles. Any conventional tactical assessment would classify it as a secondary priority, dangerous but not critical to enemy operations. Chen saw something different. She noticed how other Hive creatures positioned themselves in relation to this particular warrior, how their movements became more coordinated when it was present. This wasn't just another combat drone, it was a psychological anchor for the local collective consciousness. Her shot took the creature through its primary sensory cluster at a range that should have been impossible for a projectile weapon. The massive warrior toppled backward, green ichor spraying across the battlefield, and the effect on surrounding Hive forces was immediate and devastating. Drones that had been fighting with mechanical determination suddenly hesitated. Their movements became erratic, uncertain. Some began retreating without orders, while others milled about in confusion. The psychological impact of losing their anchor creature rippled through the local collective consciousness like cracks spreading through crystal. Commander Zexhai watched this development with growing fascination. His enhanced intellect could analyze what the human was doing, but he couldn't truly comprehend the intuitive understanding that guided her target selection. It was as if she could see patterns in enemy behavior that were invisible to enhanced perception, reading the battlefield on a level that transcended mere tactical analysis. "Remarkable," he murmured, speaking to Lieutenant Yartok through their secure channel. "She's not just eliminating targets. She's conducting psychological warfare against a collective consciousness. How does an unenhanced mind perceive vulnerabilities that our enhanced analysis systems miss?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kellyan, the ethereal attached to their unit for psychic support, had been monitoring the human sniper's activities through his enhanced mental perception. Unlike the other species, ethereals possessed limited telepathic abilities that allowed them to sense emotional and psychological patterns. "Commander," Kellyan's mental voice carried notes of wonder and confusion. "I've been attempting to analyze the human's mental patterns during combat. What I've discovered challenges everything we understand about consciousness and decision-making." The ethereal paused, struggling to translate concepts that existed beyond normal language. "Enhanced species like ourselves process battlefield information through logical frameworks, following decision trees optimized for efficiency and success probability. But this human operates on multiple levels simultaneously." "Explain," Zexhai requested, genuinely curious about insights from a species whose mental capabilities far exceeded his own. She processes tactical data through conscious analysis, just as we do. But simultaneously, her subconscious mind evaluates thousands of micro-patterns that our enhanced cognition filters out as irrelevant. Subtle changes in enemy posture, barely perceptible variations in movement timing, emotional resonances that our modifications prevent us from detecting. Kellyan's explanation continued as they watched Chen eliminate another priority target with impossible precision. Her unenhanced nervous system preserves evolutionary capabilities that our species abandoned when we embraced technological enhancement. She sees the battlefield not just as a tactical environment, but as a complex emotional and psychological ecosystem. This revelation struck at the heart of galactic military doctrine. For centuries, species had pursued enhancement as the path to military superiority. They had eliminated weaknesses, optimized capabilities, and created soldiers who were superior to their natural ancestors in every measurable way. But in doing so, they had also eliminated the chaotic creativity that came with unmodified consciousness. They had traded intuitive understanding for analytical precision, sacrificing the ability to perceive subtle patterns in favor of processing power. The human sniper represented something that the galaxy had forgotten was possible. A warrior who combined advanced training with primitive instincts, creating capabilities that transcended what either enhanced or unenhanced beings could achieve alone. Another crack echoed across the battlefield, and a hive artillery position erupted in secondary explosions as Chen's shot found its ammunition storage. The detonation sent shockwaves across enemy lines, further disrupting their coordination and morale. The galaxy's forces pressed their advance, but now they moved with new understanding. The human had shown them that true combat effectiveness came not from the elimination of limitations, but from the mastery of them. Fear could be a tool rather than a weakness. Intuition could complement analysis rather than competing with it. As the sun began to set over Zerion Prime's crimson landscape, the tide of battle had turned decisively. The hive forces, their command structure shattered by precision elimination and their psychological cohesion broken, were in full retreat across multiple sectors. The galaxy's soldiers knew no fear. Then a human sniper stepped onto the field. The battle for Zerion Prime had become a case study that would reshape military doctrine across the galaxy. 3 days after Corporal Sarah Chen's intervention, the hive forces had withdrawn from the planet entirely, abandoning positions they had held for months in the face of continued precision elimination of their command structure. But the real transformation was occurring among the galaxy's enhanced soldiers themselves. Commander Zexhai stood in the temporary command center that had been established in the reclaimed territory, reviewing after-action reports that defied everything he had been taught about modern warfare. The human sniper's success had triggered a chain reaction of tactical innovation throughout the galactic forces. As species that had relied on enhancement for centuries began to rediscover the value of organic instincts. "Sir, the Corvalian Shock Corps is requesting permission to implement new training protocols," reported Lieutenant Yartok, his mandibles clicking with barely contained excitement. "They want to study human hunting techniques and incorporate them into their long-range reconnaissance program." The irony wasn't lost on Zexhai. The Corvalians, whose genetic modifications had made them among the galaxy's most efficient soldiers, were now seeking to learn from a species they had considered primitive just days earlier. Their enhanced physiology gave them superior strength, speed, and sensory capabilities, but they lacked the intuitive understanding of stalking and patience that had made Chen so devastatingly effective. "What about the Vorthak?" Zexhai asked, reviewing the tactical summaries on his display. "Even more interesting, sir. Their natural armor has always made them excellent defensive units, but they've never been effective at mobile operations. After watching the humans' repositioning techniques, they've developed new movement doctrines that maximize their protection while maintaining tactical flexibility. The reports painted a picture of fundamental change throughout the galactic military. The ethereals, whose enhanced mental capabilities had always been focused on logical analysis, were now studying human emotional intelligence and its applications in combat psychology. They had discovered that their telepathic abilities became more effective when combined with intuitive understanding of enemy motivation and morale. But perhaps the most significant development was occurring among the rank-and-file soldiers of all species. For the first time in generations, enhanced beings were experiencing genuine battlefield emotions. The genetic modifications and mental conditioning that had eliminated fear had also suppressed excitement, intuition, and the complex range of feelings that drove organic creativity. Chen's example had shown them that these emotions weren't weaknesses to be eliminated, but tools to be mastered. Fear could sharpen focus. Excitement could inspire innovation. Intuition could reveal patterns that pure logic missed. The human herself had become something of a legend among the troops, though she remained characteristically modest about her achievements. Zexhai had finally met her in person during the post-battle briefings, and he had been surprised by her unassuming demeanor. She was shorter than most galactic species, lacking the obvious enhancements that marked elite soldiers, yet she possessed a quiet confidence that spoke of absolute mastery of her craft. "I don't understand why everyone's making such a big deal about this," Chen had said during their conversation, her voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone that seemed to characterize human communication. "Back home, this is just basic hunting technique. You study your target, understand its behavior, and take the shot when the moment's right." Basic hunting technique, Zexhai had repeated, wondering how a species could consider such devastating effectiveness to be merely basic. "Sure. My grandfather taught me to hunt when I was 12. Said that understanding your prey was more important than having the best equipment. You have to think like they think, move like they move, until you can predict what they'll do before they do it." The concept was foreign to enhanced species who relied on technological analysis and predictive algorithms. The idea that a 12-year-old could learn techniques that surpassed military-grade enhancement seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Now, as Zexhai reviewed the strategic situation, he realized that Chen's intervention had accomplished far more than just winning a single battle. She had demonstrated that the galaxy's approach to warfare had been fundamentally flawed, prioritizing technological superiority over tactical creativity. The Hive Collective had been considered nearly invincible because their shared consciousness eliminated individual fear and uncertainty. They moved with perfect coordination, made decisions based on pure logic, and adapted their tactics through rapid information sharing. Against enhanced species who fought in similarly predictable patterns, they had proven devastatingly effective. But humans brought chaos into the equation. Their unenhanced minds produced decisions that couldn't be anticipated through logical analysis. Their emotional responses generated creative solutions that no amount of technological enhancement could replicate. Most importantly, their capacity for individual initiative meant that a single human could make decisions that changed the entire course of a conflict. "Commander," Veltar announced from the communications station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from across the galaxy. Military commands from 12 different sectors are requesting human advisors for their operations against Hive forces." The news didn't surprise Zexhai. Word of the Xerian Prime victory had spread rapidly through military channels, along with detailed analysis of the tactics that had made it possible. Every commander facing Hive incursions wanted to understand how a single primitive warrior had accomplished what entire fleets had failed to achieve. But the real revolution was just beginning. Chen's success had proven that humanity's apparent primitiveness was actually a sophisticated form of evolution adapted to impossible circumstances. Their home world had forged them into survivors who could adapt to any environment, think creatively under pressure, and maintain individual effectiveness even when separated from technological support. The galaxy's enhanced species had evolved beyond their natural limitations, but in doing so, they had also evolved beyond their natural capabilities. They had become specialized tools, supremely effective within their designed parameters, but lacking the flexibility to adapt to truly unprecedented challenges. Humans represented something different. Generalists who had retained the full spectrum of natural capabilities while developing them to extraordinary levels through necessity. They were the only species that had achieved interstellar capability without abandoning their basic biology, creating a unique combination of primitive instincts and advanced knowledge. "Sir," Yartok reported, consulting his tactical display, "we're receiving reports from other human units across the galaxy. It appears that Corporal Chen's success wasn't an isolated incident. Human forces are achieving similar results in multiple sectors." The implications were staggering. If humans could consistently replicate this level of tactical effectiveness, they would fundamentally alter the balance of power in the galactic conflict. The Hive Collective, which had seemed unstoppable against enhanced species, might prove vulnerable to human unpredictability. But more than that, humans represented a new model for military development. Instead of pursuing ever greater enhancement and specialization, species could focus on developing their natural capabilities to extraordinary levels. They could maintain their biological flexibility while gaining the benefits of advanced training and technology. The transformation was already beginning among the galactic forces on Zerion Prime. Enhanced soldiers were learning to trust their instincts alongside their technological systems. They were discovering that the emotions and uncertainties their modifications had eliminated actually served important functions in combat decision-making. Fear kept soldiers alert and focused. Excitement inspired creative problem-solving. Uncertainty encouraged careful planning and contingency preparation. The galaxy's enhanced warriors had eliminated these responses as inefficiencies, but humans had shown that they could be channeled into tactical advantages. As the sun set over the reclaimed battlefields of Zerion Prime, Zexhai found himself contemplating the future of galactic warfare. The arrival of humanity had changed more than just the tactical situation. It had challenged fundamental assumptions about what it meant to be an effective warrior. The galaxy's soldiers had known no fear, and in their fearlessness, they had found themselves unable to adapt to an enemy that operated beyond their logical frameworks. But humans understood that true courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the mastery of fear in service of a greater purpose. Chen's example had shown that the most sophisticated warrior wasn't necessarily the most enhanced one, but rather the one who could combine natural capability with learned skill, intuitive understanding with technological support, individual creativity with team coordination. The Hive Collective would adapt to this new threat, of course. They always did. But they would be facing an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. A species that combined the unpredictability of primitive consciousness with the knowledge and tools of an advanced civilization. The galaxy's soldiers had finally found something more powerful than fearlessness. The ability to acknowledge fear, understand it, and use it as a weapon against those who had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive.